Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our reading through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We are now in the Children of Adam section, and we turn to a little poem called We Too, How Long We Were Fooled. Now, it's an interesting poem, and you know, it's one of those things where this is not a poem that's often spoken of when you talk about Leaves of Grass. But I'm always amazed when I look at a little poem like this. The genius of Whitman and the games that he plays. For example, this is one of the great we poems of Leaves of Grass. 34 times we will be mentioned in this poem. It's like, it's going to be an interesting kind of echoing. It's one of the great friendship poems or lover poems of Leaves of Grass. And so as we get into it, we'll kind of enjoy that fact as well. Now, my assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt, and you were with us from the very beginning of inscriptions all the way up and including through ages and ages returning at intervals, which we have already worked with. Now let's go to background information, and Norton's will tell us the following about this one. In 1860, actually, this was number 7 of the poems in the group of Children of Adam. It began with the line, "You and I, what the earth is, we are." And then he ended up dropping it in 1867 when the poem took its title from the present first line, and then another line was also dropped, and there were a few minor changes along the way. But the poem now becomes this very interesting poem about metaphor. Now, you know, I've always argued for you guys in 303 that if you want to be a good writer, you got to be a good reader. And one of the interesting things about Whitman is the way in which he plays around with metaphor. So, for example, you might want to create a little chart for yourself and just see how all of the different metaphors, some readers of this poem have said at least 25 different kinds of metaphor are going to be represented here. Let's go to work with the poem and just kind of enjoy it as we go. Notice again the repetition of all the we's, as we said, right? Okay. Now, the two that's going to be referenced right away, some have argued is Adam and Eve, obviously, with Children of Adam. And notice the elided verb in fooled, spelled without the E for ED. Again, trying to capture that American kind of diction as we've seen in many examples already. We too. How long we were fooled. Now we're going to see this long as being an important part of this poem. Now, transmuted, we swiftly escape as nature escapes. By the way, notice nature here capitalized as in the next line as well, right? We are nature. Long have we been absent, but now, back to the second line, we return. Now, we'll pause for a moment and put it in 3A. You can't think of this set of lines without thinking, of course, of Emerson's classic little essay, Circles. Go back, we did a lecture on this already at learnstrong.net. Now, what is it that we have become? We become. Now, watch all of these metaphors of what he's going to say the relationship with he and the lover is. We are nature. Long have we been absent, but now we return. We become plants, trunks, foliage, roots, bark. Obviously, we're doing all these growing kinds of references. Of course, in a collection of poems called Leaves of Grass, that makes sense, right? We are bedded in the ground. It's fun, this use of the word bedded, right? Has to make you smile. I've said to you guys, I think Whitman's smiling all the way through writing these poems. And of course, when he uses a verb like bedded, it's going to be all kinds of fun for him. We are rocks, stability, right? We are oaks. Now we're going to see in the Calamus section a famous poem about in Louisiana and live oaks. So we're going to get to that one, playing the same game. We grow, I told you it's growing dynamism. We grow in the openings side by side. Harmony, right? Notice we browse. We are two among the wild herds. Spontaneous as any makes us think, of course, of spontaneous me. And the fact of wild herds, again, go back to some of the things we said in our discussion of the inscriptions poems when herds and buffalo and the like, wild herds were being referenced. It's a tragedy, of course, to realize that by the time Whitman's writing this set of lines, the herds are already starting to diminish, sad to say. And then Notice from the land to the water, this dynamic movement. He loves to play this game. We are two fishes swimming in the sea together. We are what locust blossoms are. We drop scent. Again, he loves this word drop. We drop scent around lanes, morning and evening. We're back to, obviously, growing flower imagery. We're also the coarse smut of beasts, vegetables, minerals. The inclusivist poet. In other words, he's going to celebrate not just the positive, but also the negative, the coarse smut. We are two predatory hawks. Later it's going to be in a poem called Dalliance of the Eagles, the same game. We soar, and of course the minute we hear hawk, we think about the conclusion of Song of Myself, 52, right? We soar above and look down, right? We're two resplendent suns, and now we're going to step off and go into the galaxies, right? We it is who balance ourselves, orbic and stellar. I've already talked to you guys about how Whitman loved the new science of astronomy, so here he's able to kind of fit some of that into this poem as well. Of course, harmonious. We are as two comets, right? We prowl, fanged and four-footed. Notice the alighted verb of fanged, right? And four-footed in the woods. We spring on prey. We are two clouds, forenoons and afternoons driving overhead. We are seas mingling. We are two of those cheerful waves rolling over each other and intertwining each other. It's an interesting adjective, cheerful. How can a wave be cheerful? And yet here he is playing that game, right? This interwedding each other is, of course, going to be a powerful, and I think he's having fun again, just like he was having fun earlier with bedded, right? Interwedding each other. We are what the atmosphere is, and then he's going to give us four. Transparent, receptive, pervious, as in permeable, right? Impervious. We are snow, rain, cold, darkness. It's a strange. He loves to do this. I mean, I get it. Rain, cold, darkness. I get it. He's playing around with all these different elements of weather. We are each product and influence of the globe. Now that's an interesting idea, influence of the globe. We're going to get to more of this when we meet Passage to India later. We have circled and circled. Notice this returning that takes us back to line 3, right? And the circles that we were referencing in terms of Emerson circles. We have circled and circled till we've arrived home again. We have to think about Odysseus and Homer, right? We too, we have voided all but freedom and all but our own joy. He culminates, of course, with the celebration of what Thomas Jefferson and his pals will celebrate, of course, in the Declaration of Independence. The idea of freedom and the idea of Scooby Snacks, the pursuit of happiness. Scooby Snacks, joy, right? Well, what are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? Well, how about a message like, nothing can keep the energy of great friends apart, right? It's not a possibility for him. Friendship is therefore central for Whitman to survival. At the repetition, I love this repetition of the power of we, right? It's compelling in this poem. And we're going to see some of this played out elsewhere. At 3A, well, think about all the different types of readings that we've had on friendship. We think, of course, of Cicero's classic essay on friendship, and we've lectured that at learnstrong.net. How about T.S. Eliot's, remember those final lines from East Coker, love is most nearly itself and here and now cease to matter? And then, of course, to finish that, all men ought to be explorers, which plays that so well in terms of this set of lines. Finally, at 3B, how are you going to own a set of lines like this? How about this? Do you have such a friend? Can we even say it? Do you have such a rock, right? Or a lover in your life where you can say something very similar, and to that degree, completing the circle. Of course, we have to go back to our done and valediction forbidding morning. No question that Whitman has that in mind as he's playing a game like this as well. A great poem of friendship, a great poem of love, a great poem of we. Thank you.